How would you say the city has changed over the years, for better or worse?
Now, remember, I was the mayor of Cambridge, so that's my specialty.
Yeah, how have you
Boston
changed?
is across the bridge. That's a whole other situation. I often tell people my hobby is Boston politics, because I'm not involved in it, but just trying to figure out what was that? So Cambridge, that really happened in a very interesting way. So I got involved in politics via the issue of rent control. In Cambridge, in those times, the big issue, actually in Massachusetts, the several cities and towns that chose to have rent control, the issue was always either you support it or you don't in politics. And if you were one of these people who kind of saw both sides, you were killed. There was no middle on rent control. It was like, and so I lived in a rent control building, and some neighbors several streets over at a community meeting told the housing authority, the public housing authority, that it would be good to buy our building, it would be okay. And so the residents in my building said, well, none of us are rich, so how do you folks give away our building? So I have this tendency when I get mad, I get real mad. So that sort of fueled my beginning. I became the tenant president of a rent control building and got involved in politics in that way. And finally, a mayor of Cambridge named Al Vellucci, Italian gentleman who came to politics without a high school diploma, but he eventually got a GED, but the smartest person you could meet. And I said to him, I would love to know how long before we can not have to come to City Hall to, see if we're going to be put in the street here. And he says, well, you always have to come. So that was and he said, if it makes you mad, why don't you run for office? And so I did.
Perfect. Love that.
I'm doing good because I usually am way less succinct, but let's try another one.
I love that. I think in one of our earlier discussions, you described him as a mentor to you.
Very much was. Al Vellucci was, God, he was smart. But to those, I know your firm does a lot in bio and tech. So Al Vellucci is the reason that all that biotech is in Cambridge. And it's not rocket science. Here you have this Italian guy without a high school education who was brilliant, but just didn't have opportunity. And so he used to like to play with Harvard and say, you don't pay any taxes, and you're a drain on city services, and I'm thinking about paving over Harvard Yard and things of that nature. And so Al liked to pick at issues. So he looks over in Kendall Square and he knows that there is research done on animals. And so Al comes into the council and says, well, there's all this bio research going on in animals. We don't know, are they making people with 3 heads? What's going on in those labs? We need to know. And so, of course, Harvard and MIT were like, oh my God, what to do? So somebody, and I think I kind of picked this up for him, in politics, if somebody gives you a good football, you should be able to know how to run with it. So somebody gave him the National Institute of Health's guidelines for animal research. He brought them to the Cambridge City Council. He told them to adopt these. The council, with good sense, did. Suddenly, the only places in the country where researchers knew what the rules were for animal research was Cambridge. So that's how that began. And I think the non-high school grad Al Vellucci never got his due on this, but the cluster in Cambridge with the Boston Consulting Group, we asked them, take a look at Kendall Square and tell us what you see. And they said, well, they came back and said, this is the most innovative square mile in the country. So like as mayor, that you get that ball, you ought to be able to do something with it. So I think that would be the story of my mayoral time. But